Assalamu alaikum and welcome back to another episode of Journey of the Heart. I'm your host Muhammad Arif, and in today's episode, it's a very special one close to my heart. I'm joined by my wife, Dr. Sabrina Saifullah, a passionate naturopathic doctor based in Montreal with a background in human biology and psychology from the University of Toronto and a doctorate of naturopathy from the Canadian College of Naturopathic Medicine. She brings both science and soul into her practice. Her focus in her work is on women's health, supporting fertility, hormonal balance, and overall wellness, along with care for families, children, and those navigating stress, fatigue, and chronic concerns. Her approach is rooted in compassion, faith, and a deep belief in the interconnectedness of physical, emotional, and spiritual health. She recently joined Solstice Perinatal Clinic, where she helps women through the sacred transition of fertility, pregnancy, and postpartum. In this episode, we'll try to explore her journey, the role of faith in healing, and what it truly means to care for the whole person, mind, body, and soul. So let us begin this heartful conversation with the woman I'm blessed to call my wife, Dr. Sabrina Saifullah. So welcome to the show. Thank you for joining me on this episode. Can you please share some more insight on your journey and your view on the perspective of spiritual and physical health, interconnectedness of this?
Walaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Thank you for having me on your show and for that lovely intro. So a little bit more about how I got on this path of naturopathic medicine. So as a child, I was always fascinated by nature. I loved nature. Basically my daily activities for fun was just going into the backyard and observing insects and plants and ants and what they were up to. And I just had a really profound respect for nature because there's so much intricacy and there's so much beauty and perfection in it. And as I grew up, I started to develop this desire to be a doctor. I always wanted to be in a field where I could make an impact on the lives of others, and I felt like becoming a doctor would be the best way to do that. So I was completing my studies at the University of Toronto, studying psychology and human biology, and it was in my third year that I came across this ad for the Canadian College of Naturopathic Medicine, and it was talking about this program where you can become a naturopathic doctor, which I never had heard of before. And I was interested, so I attended one of the Discovering CCNM sessions that they were holding at the college. And when I went to that session and found out what the program was all about, I just knew it was a right fit for me, because the thing that always felt a little bit off for me about kind of conventional medicine was that it was very much just focused on the body, and it's kind of very reductionistic, and which there's benefits to kind of a very scientific model, but naturopathic medicine, it also incorporates a very holistic view. There's this huge emphasis on mental health. There's inclusion of traditional systems of healing, like traditional Chinese medicine, and yeah, it just really spoke to me. It seemed like a perfect fit, so I applied for the program. I got in, and then that's how I ended up doing what I do now.
Thank you for sharing that. Now, Can you please share a bit on what's in our spiritual tradition, if I recall, the holistic approach that our Prophet, peace be upon him, emphasized on, as well as how in this day and age, where in our secular society, it's two different components, the physical and the spiritual, are not connected in any form or shape. And in the time of, from the very early time, if I recall, until Imam al-Ghazali, time of his Imam al-Ghazali, that when there was some sickness, some problem with anyone, the doctors were trained in not just physical, but to recognize the spiritual lack, the emptiness, the challenges, and able to advise people on that. How do you approach this natural medicine and understanding of the spiritual well-being that is intertwined with our physical and mental health as well? If you could give your insight and your approach, and this discipline in naturopathic medicine.
Sure. So yeah, this is a topic that I love talking about because it's just so fascinating to me, that Islam truly gives a framework for integrating all the different aspects of the human being, from the physical to the mental, the emotional, and the spiritual. And it kind of gives the foundation and the framework to live a full life. And in Islam, we see that it's all truly connected. It's all kind of built in, which I'm going to kind of touch on some ways that I feel that it is. But also from the Western perspective, as you mentioned, it's all kind of separate. Like, we have the physical health industry, and then there's like mental health, and they're considered separate, whereas those two things are already very, very interconnected. That we understand now, for example, how the gut microbiome influences the brain, and the other way as well. Like, our gut bacteria actually make serotonin, which is a neurotransmitter. So I think there's more and more awareness of the interconnection, but then the spiritual aspect is just something that's completely kind of discarded on the side. Like, people kind of do that on their own, or they don't do it, or they don't even believe that we have a soul. But in Islam, it's a very natural religion. It's very much based on fitra, like the innate human disposition. So, for example, something like praying 5 times a day, there's so much to that is beneficial for our physical and mental health. Just the act of being connected to the sun, of paying attention to where the sun is, because our times for prayer, even though nowadays we might look at an app or to kind of find out what time the prayer time is, it's actually based on the movement of the sun. Like, Fajr is, before the rising of the sun, and then I think the Dhuhr is when like the sun is at its peak, and then you have the Asr prayer, and then the sunset prayer, and then when it's night, when the sun has set, there's the Isha prayer. So all of these times kind of orient you in the day. And traditionally, I think most people would go to the masjid to pray. I know that that's still obligatory for men. But the interesting thing is, when you go out at all these different parts of the day, you're getting exposure to the different type of light. So there's very new and very interesting research that shows that we actually have photoreceptors all over our skin, and we also have photoreceptors on the retina of our eyes. And these let us know, like, they convert electrical signals from the sun to our brain and help us to regulate our circadian rhythm, which then controls our sleep and our wake cycles, and then it also affects our hormone regulation. and also exposure to light influences things like vitamin D production, which is a very, very crucial vitamin that affects literally every system of our body and has been somehow linked to every disease. So yeah, there's just that aspect of getting out there more, and also the concept of praying together. The social connectedness that is built into Islam is not just something that is an Islamic thing. For example, Jumas, which literally means congregation, but being among other humans, being social, that is so crucial for our mental well-being. And there's even research now that shows that engaging in some sort of religious congregation once a week, regardless of which religion, actually improves longevity, like living a longer life. And just being religious in general, there are studies now showing that it reduces cardiovascular disease risk, it reduces the risk of cancer. So yeah, those are some of the things I wanted to touch on. And then another one would be how the Prophet, peace and blessings of Allah be upon him, he was very connected to the earth, kind of like what we would call grounding now. And there's a lot of research coming out on this about how the earth actually has a negative electrical charge. And when we connect our bodies to the earth, for example, if you're to take off your shoes and put your bare feet on the ground, then there's this transfer of electrons that happens directly from the earth or from water directly into your body, and that those electrons can be used for healing and for energy production. So something that I thought was very fascinating that I found out from one of my friends who's she's half Sunni, half Shia, and she told me that the reason why the Shia Muslims, they pray, they use like a stone to prostrate on, is because the Prophet ﷺ never bowed down. He never did sajda on a material that wasn't natural. And I thought that was so fascinating. I never thought about that, but it's true. And there's even hadiths where, I think the one about Laylatul Qadr, there was the Prophet ﷺ, he had like some mud on his forehead. So we know the Prophet ﷺ, he prayed on the earth directly. So again, just showing how much of a natural religion and how connected to the earth the Prophet ﷺ was.
Thank you for those insights. It's they're beautiful and very meaningful. If I recall, there was a story you have shared with me in terms of the importance of physical exercise and how one such event has shaped your understanding of the spiritual impact of that. It was your a moment that you had your advice given to you by Sheikh Nuhamim Keller. If you could share more on that, give us some insight into that experience.
Sure. So when I was 20 years old, I was feeling really spiritually down. I was just at a really low place. I had started to wear hijab, and I was just feeling, alone. I was going to university at the time, and I decided to write to one of my spiritual teachers, Sheikh Nuhamim Keller, and I wrote to him telling him about how, I just felt so spiritually dead, like my heart was dead, and any acts of worship that I was doing were just felt really laborious and like I wasn't connected. And so he sent me a voice note back, which was really, it was just such an interesting insight, because he had never met me in person, and yet the things he said just based on the email that I sent, it's like he knew me. And this is where, there's that spiritual insight that, sheikhs have, because
people of the path, they have insights.
yeah. So he said that I should start exercising. I mean, he gave me some spiritual things to do, smiling more, and doing the dhikr, like the remembrance of the path. But then also he talked a lot about exercise, and he used the phrase "tend your horse." And this is something that he talks about a lot, and it's a Sufi concept. I believe it was first introduced by Imam Ghazali, where he talks about how the body is like a riding horse or a riding animal, and the rider is the ruh, is the spirit. And so all of us are having this, we all have a soul, we have a spirit, but in this realm we have a physical existence, and that's the horse. And so we need to ride it. We need to make sure that our horse is healthy and strong so that we can kind of ride through this journey of life. And so, he recommended this program called XBX that was created by the Royal Canadian Armed Forces in the 1960s. And if anyone is interested, you could just Google that XBX program for women, and the PDF will come up, and it's very thorough and it's very good. And it's just basically a 12-minute exercise you do every day that works out all the different muscle groups of your body.
It reminds me of like my time in the army, where the first thing you do is basically wake up and start by PT exercise. And that's, it's interesting to see that's part of our spiritual discipline is integrated with the physical discipline as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So when I started doing that program, and also I got my vitamin D levels checked, which is something he recommended, and obviously they were very low, I started to feel better, and I started to have more energy and to actually do worship. And sometimes we think it's a spiritual problem, but really it's a physical or a mental, emotional issue, right? And yeah, that was kind of one of the really personal ways that I experienced the interconnectedness of spirituality, physical health, and mental wellness as well.
Thank you for sharing that story. And for those of you who don't know, Sheikh Nuhamim Keller is a renowned Islamic scholar, and yeah, we could touch on a different episode more on the path, the tariqah of Sheikh Nuhamim Keller and so forth. For today, we are going to end it over here. If there is more interest and you guys would like to know, or any question in terms of naturopathic medicine, as well the spiritual well-being that is interconnected with our physical and mental health, or any other thing that is relevant to a woman's and children's health, we will leave a link to the description for reaching out to her, I guess through Instagram or so. And yeah, if is there anything else you want to add before we close?
No, that's pretty much it. You can find me on Instagram if anyone wants to stay in touch. So my Instagram handle is Sabrina Wellness, all one word, .nd. And so thank you for having me. It was a pleasure being here. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. May the peace and blessings of Allah Almighty be with each and every one of you.
Thank you again for joining us, and hope that this episode have spoken to you, and it may address many questions that we may have in terms of our physical and spiritual well-being, what's the connectedness, and how, especially in our time where it's disconnected in a secular society, we just see everything as its own unit. So it's important we remember and go back to our tradition and see Islam for what it is. Thank you again. Assalamu alaikum. Thank you for joining us.
Oh Lord, forgive me and have mercy upon me, and guide me and pardon me, and put it in my heart to turn to you so sincerely. Astaghfirullah al-Azim, la ilaha illallah. Astaghfirullah al-Azim, la ilaha illallah. Astaghfirullah al-Azim, la ilaha illallah. Muhammadur Rasul.